Excellent. You got to do what you got to do. Good afternoon to my colleagues, to the people of the territory. Good afternoon to the testifiers. My first set of questions has to do with public works and property and procurement in their attempt to try to mitigate some of these projects and deal with the contracting aspect of it. We are in a time crunch and we have 24 hours in a day. Are we planning on negotiating into these contracts that potentially the workers are working on 2 shifts, whether it's in 8-hour interval, whether it's 12 hours shift? What are we doing in regards to that, minus saying that we might have to do cost overruns for night differential? I am not really a fan of this. It's because if that's what you're going to tell me, I say to people, Alaska is dark 6 months out of the year and they have sunlight 6 months out of the year and people still go to work. And for me, I see us utilizing shifts around the clock to help speed up our time frame and getting these projects done. Is that something you guys are negotiating as well? Property and procurement specifically for this one.
Senator Lisa Alejandro, basically when we receive the scope of work is based on a time frame and the expectation of the contractor to complete the work within the time that both DPW, the engineers, and the contractor that responds to it provide those services. Now, how they utilize this?
Well, I understand, ma'am, in regards to a time limit, but I'm asking you, we have to be innovative at this point. We have to come up with ideas to guarantee that these projects are done, because we do give people timelines in these contracts, and a lot of times, oh, it's not finished, cost overruns, change the scope. This is what we constantly hear.
1 minute.
So for me, we as a government, I'm asking, are we going to push these types of narratives in negotiating these contracts? That's what I'm trying to find out. So it's not a thought process for you guys at all, just dealing with a hard line timeline.
Senator, I can respond. Derek Gabriel, Commissioner, DPW. So it really is a balance. We have very extensive conversations with our contractors about how they plan to execute the projects in the timeline that we're given. I think that, each island is a really small knit community. So even when we're doing our road projects, oftentimes they directly abut a neighborhood. And a lot of the residents don't want to deal with the noise or light issues that come with working at night. We ask the contractors to provide their solutions to executing the contracts or projects in the timelines that we give them, and then it's up to them to execute it on the approved with the approved mechanisms.
Time.
Okay, that goes back to speaking to you, Mr. Gabriel. One of the things I do notice a lot of times with us doing some of the road projects, it has to do with you would see people during the day striping the roads, and then cars are rolling over these stripes. I've never seen anything like it. Do you guys negotiate to do some of these in the evening? Because I understand what you're saying about the light, but if we're on a crunch, we're potentially getting $15-20 billion. Sometimes things have to give in order for this emergency project to go through. So I understand we have to accommodate the people of the territory, but sometimes we have to come up with other ideas and make sure they're negotiated in to get these projects done. And specifically, how do you handle those striping? That's something I'm concerned about when I watch all the time.
So just in regards to striping, I think, striping, most of the striping, I would probably say 99% of it is done, like, as you mentioned, during the day. It is high traffic time, but that's the safest time for them to stripe. I not only that, but the sun also helps the striping to kind of adhere to the roadway a little bit quicker. So that just, I guess, that addresses striping. In regards to vertical construction, I would say that there are several elements, several activity centers that can be done at night where there's a minimal impact to the surrounding community, especially once the building is erected, once they're inside. And I think a lot of that is done. We see that on several of our projects ongoing now. But as far as on the horizontal side, you know, there's a balance that has to be struck.
Mr. Chair, I heard you said time. Do I have to do point of information after, or could I ask a few more questions?
I'm going to give you some leeway, Senator. You can ask a couple more questions.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you. I wanted to ask a question in regard to the 2% and 5%. I do appreciate what the administration did in trying to negotiate to get those matching funds down. And I know one of my colleagues was asking for the data on the 98% match. Could I also make a request to get overall for also the 95% match as well, and the deadlines for those also? I wanted to ask about the bundle, the Envision Tomorrow program. Several of my colleagues touched on it. That is a major problem or concern for a lot of us in the community. For me, why, and this is for Ms. Octolin Williams Octolis, what I want to know specifically, when it comes to dealing with the contractors, I know several months ago I had spoken to yourself and Ms. Clendenin in regards to the law that says that for homeowners, they can be their own contractors. And it was something you guys said you would look into. Is that something that you decide to incorporate, or after you looked at it, it's something you won't be able to touch at all? I know I had a conversation that said it potentially, it was happening, but I want to make sure what all avenues are open to make sure we have enough contractors to get these projects through.
Yes, Senator. The owner-led approach is something that when ODR took it over, we started doing research as to how we can implement that. So we have drafted a program for owner-led, starting with a pilot program of 30 homes to make sure that we work out the kinks and provide support to homeowners to be able to do the work on their own, but still have the payments processed through the program. So the next step for us is to have HFA to approve the proposal that we put together, and then we will have to do a substantial amendment to be able to implement that within the programmatic the agreements, the subrecipient agreements for the program. So we're at the first stage. It requires 2 more approvals, and we hope to implement it later on this year.
Well, Ms. I am very happy to say that, because when I made the suggestion a couple of months ago, I know you guys said you would dive in and check it out. So I'm very happy that you actually made the effort. And even if it's a pilot program, let's try different avenues to see if this could work. Because at the end of the day, I don't want us to have deadlines and we miss deadlines, we run out of money. I want the people to get their homes. I want us to spend as much of this money as possible. My final question, I wanted to ask about when it comes to dealing with the potential of gross receipt taxes. If we get $15 billion, that's roughly about $750 million that's going to be put into the coffers of the general fund via gross receipt taxes. I know we had an issue prior when it came to 2 companies wanting back their gross receipts. Now, if it's a situation that, yes, we potentially would get the 5%, that if in the future this piece of this law changes and those individuals would now get another 5% reimbursement, that would then, by technicality, reduce our overall budget by another. If we do get $15 million, reduce it down by another $750 million. Have you made accommodations for that, or are we completely leaving it alone where we're still at the same stance that the law does not allow for it now, even though legislation was being pushed previously? Do you still see those contractors still pushing for that?
So, Senator, the request was made by those contractors for us to put that before FEMA, and FEMA denied it. we have, that's the only contract where that's an issue, because gross receipts and the requirement to pay
Yeah.
gross receipts is incorporated in all other contracts.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the indulgence this round, okay?
Thank you very much, Senator Francis Haile.